When I moved into Cedar Ridge, I thought I was trading chaos for peace. After years of cramped apartments, noisy streets, and landlords who didn't know my name, Cedar Ridge felt like stepping into a picture-perfect postcard. The lawns were emerald green, mailboxes all identical and freshly painted, and the neighborhood newsletter boasted about block parties, charity bake sales, and a strong sense of community. I should have realized that anything that perfect is hiding something. For the first few months, it was exactly what I'd hoped for. Quiet mornings with coffee on the porch, evening walks where strangers smiled and waved. I kept my yard immaculate, followed every guideline in the thick HOA binder they gave me, and paid my dues without question. Then came the lemon tree. I'd always dreamed of growing my own fruit, and in the warm climate, a lemon tree seemed perfect. I planted it in the corner of my front yard, where the morning sun could reach it. It was barely 2 feet tall, with tender green leaves, and the promise of fruit in a year or two. I felt proud of it. That pride lasted exactly 1 week. An envelope appeared on my door. Inside, unauthorized vegetation planted in the front landscape. Remove immediately or face a $200 fine. I reread the HOA rules. Fruit trees weren't mentioned anywhere. In fact, the landscaping section encouraged diverse and attractive greenery. So I wrote back politely explaining there must be a misunderstanding. The next morning, I walked outside and froze. My lemon tree was going to rip from the ground, roots dangling in the dirt. A note was taped to my door. Consider this your first warning. I was furious. I went to the next HOA meeting to demand an explanation. That's where I met Gerald Whitmore, the HOA treasurer. Gerald had a face made for smirking narrow eyes, slicked back hair, and an expensive suit that screamed, "I care more about money than people." When I asked why my tree had been destroyed, Gerald leaned back in his chair and smiled like a cat with a cornered mouse. "Your tree wasn't the problem," he said. "Your attitude is." That was the beginning. Within the next month, I received 5 more violation notices. Mailbox not painted in approved shade of white. Mine was identical to my neighbor's. Lawn ornaments exceeding quantity limit. I had 2 solar garden lights. Garage door left open for extended period. It had been 12 minutes. Improperly stored garden hose. Unauthorized seasonal decoration. A small fall wreath on my door. Each violation carried a fine. Each fine came with a copy of a rule. I swear it wasn't there before. It was as if Gerald was inventing them just for me. Then one evening, while walking past the clubhouse, I heard Gerald's voice. I paused, hidden by a hedge, and listened. "Once she racks up enough unpaid fines," he said to another board member, "we can slap a lien on her house. Easy money." My stomach turned. This wasn't about keeping the neighborhood pretty. This was about theft, legal theft, hidden behind the HOA's rulebook. I started asking around. First, people were nervous, glancing over their shoulders before muttering, "Just pay the fines. It's easier." But then I found the ones who had stories like mine. There was Ruth, whose perfectly fine fence had been labeled unsafe until she replaced it with one built by a contractor Gerald recommended. There was Jake, who'd been fined for parking violations until he sold his second car right before moving away entirely. And there was an older couple, the Sandersons, who'd lost their home after the HOA foreclosed over unpaid fees that were, suspiciously, all disputed violations. 3 homes had been foreclosed on in the last year alone. Each one sold at an absurdly low price to an LLC tied to a property investment company owned by Gerald's cousin. I couldn't fight him alone. I reached out quietly, setting up a meeting at my house. 5 of us gathered in my living room, blinds drawn, shared our stories and our documents, fines, letters, photos, and that's when Mike spoke up. Mike was a quiet guy, a former financial analyst. He'd been keeping a close eye on HOA financial reports. "There's money missing," he said. "Tens of thousands of dollars over the past 2 years. Payments to a company that doesn't exist, at least not outside of a P.O. box in another state. Gerald wasn't just targeting homeowners, he was stealing from the entire community fund. We needed proof." Mike was tech-savvy, and together we came up with a risky plan. The HOA had recently started streaming their meetings online for transparency. Mike found a way to inject a pre-recorded audio clip into the live stream. The next meeting, while Gerald was smugly discussing neighborhood improvements, the feed suddenly cut to a crystal-clear recording of his voice. Between the liens and the fines, people are basically handing me their houses. If they're too stupid to read the rules, that's their fault. We'll flip the properties and make a killing. The room went silent. Gerald's face turned a sickly shade of gray. Within hours, the clip had been shared on the neighborhood Facebook group. By the next morning, it was on the local news. Headlines screamed, HOA treasurer accused of fraud and harassment. Police raided the HOA office 2 days later. Gerald was arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit real estate theft. The fallout was swift. The entire board was replaced within a month. All bogus fines were wiped clean, and the community voted to cap the OAS's enforcement powers. The 3 foreclosed homeowners were awarded settlements, and Gerald's assets were frozen. My lemon tree was replanted this time by a group of neighbors, who laughed and chatted while they dug. It flourished quickly, its branches heavy with fruit the next summer. I often sit on my porch sipping fresh lemonade, and watch kids ride bikes down the street. Cedar Ridge is peaceful again, but I know that peace came at a fight. And I'll never forget the day the treasurer's greed backfired.